Hey, good
Hello.
afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Guitar Gear Locker. And this is episode number 5 of our live stream. And my name is Alex Brooks, and this is my co-host Roger Sutherland. And yeah, I'm really pleased to announce and honored to have the legend himself, Mr. Mike Browning
Trying
of
to adjust
Nocturnus
everything.
CD.
I,
Yeah,
I'm here trying to
and
adjust everything so it looks good. I
yeah,
had a
yeah. You
problem.
hear it okay?
I had a problem with this thing this morning, so here, let
Oh,
me
okay.
turn it this way. Hold on. That should be a little bit better. I got an old
Yeah, yeah.
telescope.
Gotta get that.
And
Oh, no, you look good.
there we go. Yeah, okay, that's better.
Cool, man.
All right.
Well, welcome to the show, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, and it's an honor to be on here. I mean, Immolation has always been one of my favorite death metal bands, and it's great that
Um,
it's cool that you have a show like this, and you know,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I appreciate that. That's means a lot coming from you to say something like that. Who's been a big influence on us for sure. And I guess we'll I don't know, start with this kind of let's go back a bit and if you could just kind of take us back to how you got into music and what led you into playing the drums.
well, I think my mom had a rock, like I guess you could say a rock band, kind of like in the '70s, and they used to practice at the house, and I used to watch them practice all the time, and I would always like watch the drummer. So when I got, and I was probably about 9 or 10 when that was happening. So in school, I guess it started around sixth, seventh grade, when you start doing band, and I picked the drums.
Hmm.
So then I got into high school and I did, some high school marching band stuff, but it was kind of with that I couldn't keep going with it because the we had to like practice marching band like 2 hours a day after school, and back then I had to have a job and all that stuff. So if I wanted to have money, I had to work. I didn't come from a rich family or anything, so
Right.
I had to kind of quit the school band after 10th grade. But I still, wanted to keep playing drums at that point, just not from a marching band kind of thing. So I got a drum set, and then weird as my last year of school, 12th grade, about halfway through the school year, this new student comes into the school named Trey, and
Right.
so yeah, I met Trey in high school, and it was like we started talking, and he's like, "Yeah, I just got a guitar," and I'm like, "Yeah, I just got a drum set," and it was kind of cool the way it worked out like that. And we started jamming together, and we did this. We put a little band together with a singer, guy named Howard Reed, and I don't. I think the bass player was. I think the bass player was named Mike as well, but I don't remember where we found him. But there's a local little music store by where me and Trey lived, and we
Hmm.
lived just about a mile or two apart from each other. And there was a little private, independent music store there, um, and they had ads up on the wall. So we put an ad up and got a bass player, and I don't think we had a second guitar player at that time. But we started, we just learned a few cover songs like Scorpions and stuff like that back then, uh, and Priest, I think it was. And we did the high school talent show.
Nice,
So
nice.
that little high school talent show is actually the first version of what became Morbid Angel.
Right.
Very cool.
Now,
Yeah,
was that called Heretic? Is that what you
no,
guys were called?
that was called ICE, ICE.
Oh, okay.
And Trey came up with that name too. And then like when I left school, that was my last year, and the talent show was like in the last month of school. Everything kind of fell apart with that because Trey moved again, and he
Hmm.
moved like to the other side of Tampa, which is back then you didn't have phones, you didn't have internet, so we kind of like lost contact with each other when he moved, and I got back in contact with him about 6 or 7 months after that, and he was already in a new project with new people. But he told me, "Hey, I don't, I, our drummer isn't really working out well, and we always jammed together great. So he said, you want to join the project? So his mom had owned not owned, but worked at a apartment complex managing it. So you know how the apartment complex always has the little community center by the pool, the little room you can rent. So he
Hmm.
was able to practice in there on the weekends. So they practiced there, and it was him, Dallas, and I don't know what the drummer's name was because I never actually ran into him, but he was older than them, and he lived in like Lakeland, so he was always having to travel. I don't know where they actually met him. And then they had a guy named Chuck or Charles, he went by both, singing. And Chuck had a very strange voice, kind of like Cyrus Ungle singer,
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
kind of
Nice.
raspy, almost
Yeah, yeah.
AC/DC kind of voice thing, you know.
Uh-huh.
So I came out and watched them. They were called Death Watch.
Oh, okay.
So
Hmm.
I came out and watched, one of their rehearsals, and they didn't have the drummer. They were just playing some of the songs in there, and so I brought my drums and set it up, and we started jamming, and that became Death Watch with me in it. And
Hmm.
it, they had several songs already. They were pretty cool stuff, and I think I have a rehearsal or two of that somewhere. But
Nice.
yeah, yeah, we used to record everything with the boom boxes back then.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Cool. Yeah,
I
yeah.
think I have one or maybe two recordings because I actually ran into the singer a few years ago, and he had a bunch of stuff. He's like, dude, I hadn't seen him in like
Oh,
20, 30 years. And he was like, man, I got a couple rehearsals with you, right at the end. Because what happened was he was the singer and he owned a little bit of PA, and he ended up getting busted for like trafficking cocaine, and he got like 10 years in prison, and he was gone.
shit.
Yeah,
Wow.
he'd spent the whole 10 years in prison too. I talked to him.
Wow.
Like I said, I ran into him in a post office of all places. And I was like, he
Mhm.
looked at me, goes, "Are you Mike Browning?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "You remember me?" And I didn't even recognize him. At first he's like, "I'm Chuck, from Death Watch." I was like, "Oh my God." That was crazy. And
Yeah, yeah.
so, I talked to him, and this is when I lived in my old house, and he ended up coming over and bringing some cassettes for me, and he gave me a couple cassettes of some old practices and stuff, the Death Watch stuff. So that was
Oh,
pretty
wow.
cool. And
Nice.
but after that, it kind of Death Watch became Heretic, and it was just me and Dallas and Trey, and we
Right.
didn't have any PA at the time, so we were just like an instrumental band for quite a while, and we used to just go places like we'd rent a generator and go set up on the beach. Like Tampa has a few little kind of smaller beaches that aren't like really like big with a lot of people there. And one's
Right.
called the
Right.
Causeway. It's right by the bridge that goes over
Yep.
to Clearwater. So we used to just literally go out there and set up in the sand and play. And we'd
Nice.
get these huge crowds of people out there just watching us. And then we started doing parties, things like that. Because back then, and you're talking, 84,
Right.
83, actually
Yeah.
83. And so we did a lot of parties back then. Everybody was having parties back then. And that's when we weren't Heretic for a long time because I remember um Trey finding out that there was another Heretic, I think, in California.
Mhm.
So it was like that's when he came up with the Morbid Angel name.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Now that other Heretic, didn't they have, like, an album out on New Renaissance or something? Or maybe I'm thinking or Metal
it might
Blade,
have been
maybe?
on it might have even been on Metal Blade or something
Yeah.
because they were pretty popular. I mean, they had an album out already. That's how Trey was like, "Uh-oh, there's another Heretic, and they got an album out and everything." I think this was like 1984 by then.
Mhm.
So we changed the name to Morbid Angel because a friend of his was saying, "Oh, your music." Well, Morbid Tales and stuff had just came out,
Right.
and this guy was like, "Your music is so morbid," and Trey liked that name, Morbid, so he came up
Yeah.
with Morbid Angel somehow, and that's exactly how that got started.
Just kind of
Nice.
stuck after that. And
Yeah,
with those
Yeah.
and I
really
remember I was at a party, and
Yeah.
we were talking about because we were only a three piece, and we were talking about getting a second guitar player. So we
Mhm.
got another guitar player. Well, I was at a party and Richard Burnell was there, and I knew Richard had played guitar. Oh, if you hear
Yeah.
that, my dog's got.
Yeah. I
Man,
can see.
I have got to tell you, your dog just answered my question. I watched a couple of interviews and I kept hearing that. I was like, what does that sound? And then I saw him behind you. I was like, there, question answered.
Yeah, he's got congestive heart failure,
Oh,
and
poor guy.
so he has these coughing fits, but then they kind of stop. I got him on a new medication that just came out this year and approved by the FDA. So it's
Yeah.
helping a little bit, but it's not going to ever reverse it. So it's just going to stop it from getting worse.
It's a
But,
true story. I was working behind me on a guitar yesterday, and I was watching an interview that you were in, and my wife walked in the room because she's always doing my paperwork, and your dog was making that noise. She said, "Who's sawing?"
Yeah, he's
Poor little guy. He looked
yeah,
happy.
he's almost 14 years old, so he's
Oh, yeah.
kind of he's pretty old, and got the congestive heart failure thing, so it's not going to get better, but it's
Yeah.
definitely helping him. The new medication, so
He
it's
looks happy.
torsemide, it's called. So it's like a liquid thing you give him every day. So and he's on
Right.
like two or three medications right now, but he's getting better. I mean, which
Yeah.
is good. He's got a better quality of life right now than he did just a
good.
couple months ago.
Yeah. I'm
So
gonna keep throwing some of these on here. Yeah, we have had really good players on here.
awesome.
Yeah.
So,
But,
like, that early version of like Heretic and stuff like that, was there any of those songs already there that ended up on the Abominations record?
Oh
Like
yeah,
you
a lot of
guys,
them. A lot of them did. I think that like the Death Watch stuff didn't really. But then when Dallas was in the band, some of the stuff was his stuff. Like you
Mhm.
might have seen like the Bleed for the Devil demo thing that's live.
Yeah.
Some of those songs, like I think Coven of the Dancer and some stuff like that Dallas had wrote. So then we got Richard in the band. So we had two guitar
Mhm.
players. I saw him at a party, like I was saying, and then I said, "Hey, you want to try out for the band?" And he did. So for some reason, he was able to kind of play like Trey when he started
Yeah.
jamming with him. I guess his mind wasn't completely formed yet in playing guitar, so getting the chance to start really working with Trey that early kind of formed
Yeah.
him to be able to play like Trey quite a bit. So
Yeah.
so we got him in the band, and then Dallas ended up getting put in jail, and so we had to look for another bass player, and that's when we got John Ortega, and that was in like maybe late 1985.
Right. Yeah.
And then we got him, and then a friend of mine that used to live in Brandon, he was a singer and his name was he used to go by Metal Mike, and
Mhm.
he had moved, and one day he called me out of the blue, and this is like I said, we didn't have cell phones or internet or anything, so he called my mom's house looking for me, and I got his number, so I called him back, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm in this band. I believe they were called Barren Cemetery back then,
Mhm.
and he was in a band with David Vincent. He was the singer, and David was a bass player, and they had
Oh, wow.
Skeletor was the guitar player
Uh-huh.
from Hallows Eve, Skeletor.
Oh, yeah, that's right, Skeletor, yeah. He's on
And
is he on the first record or the
no,
Tales record
no.
or
Well, oh yeah, their first record. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then Wayne Hartzell was their drummer, who actually was on that Thy Kingdom Come demo.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
he said, "Hey, the bass player in my band has, this record company. He's got a backer with a bunch of money and all this, and he's like looking to sign a couple bands." And I told him about you guys in Massacre. So so we sent him a practice tape, which became, I don't know what it's called, but I believe it's out. Like the one that Trey was sending a little practice tape that we did with a boombox around to people, and had some of these songs on it, and we sent it to
Mhm.
David Vincent, and he sent us like a really small, like little 3-page contract, but it was really good back in the day. It's like it would have been like almost 50% of the sales. So we were like,
Mhm.
oh, this is pretty good. And it was like I still have the actual record contract that I got from, it was called Goric Records.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then he said, well, he said, there's a studio up here where I live in North Carolina, and we can record there, and I'll, pay for you guys to come up here in a Ryder truck, put all your stuff in there, come up here. And he said, I'm going to get Bill Matoyer, from Metal Blade, who did
Yeah.
just about every
So
band on Metal Blade back.
Yeah,
He was even on the first Slayer record. And he said, "I'm going to
yeah.
get Bill Metoyer to do the like the engineering and produce. Well, not really producing because David kind of wanted to produce it, and
Yeah.
so he got Bill Metoyer to do basically the engineering. And so we went up there, we signed the contract, went up there and recorded the album. And after we recorded the album, we did the recording in like 5-6 days, something like that. And we were ready to do the mixing. And David just comes to us out of nowhere and goes, "Okay, Johnny, Mike, and Richard, you're going back to Tampa, and I'm going to keep Trey here for the mix." He said, "It's just costing too much money with the hotel and everything." I'm like, this wasn't what was supposed to happen. I had a lot of ideas for my vocals, things like that for the record.
Right.
But he said, "Nope, you guys got to go back." He wouldn't even keep me there. So he sent all of us back and kept Trey there for like another week. And when Trey came back, he was just like a completely different person. He was like, "We got to fire Johnny. Johnny's a terrible bass player. The bass tracks don't even sound like a bass; they sound like a guitar." And David knows this other bass player that can be in the band. And I'm like, where did all this come from?
Oh boy.
When
You don't want to be the guy that's not in the room.
and I'm like, wow. So, but we did have that show at Rocky Point Beach Resort already booked.
Mhm.
So Trey was like, after this show, we're gonna get rid of Johnny and get this other bass player. And what's gonna happen is that once he learns all the songs, we're gonna re-record the bass tracks with him on it.
Yeah.
So that's why the album didn't come out like it was supposed to. It got postponed because we were going to have a different bass player record the tracks, and that happened to be Sterling Scarborough.
Right.
So that's
Yeah,
how I
and
met Sterling, and he had that band Incubus, not any of the ones that are out, but he had his own
Yeah.
Incubus back then, and it was like they had broke up, and actually Skeletor knew him too.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because I guess they're all from Atlanta.
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So they knew each other, and so he learned all the songs, and we did one show with Sterling, and then after that, the band split up in half, basically.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
then Richard and Trey went up to North Carolina and started jamming with David and Wayne. And they
Mhm.
had I don't know what happened with Mike. I guess he wasn't the singer they wanted for Morbid Angel. So that's when David took over the vocals, and they become Morbid Angel. And Sterling and I we were going to try out Skeletor. He was going to come down and play for us. I
Oh,
believe
wow.
he actually did come down. It's hard to remember if he did or not, but I think he did come down for a weekend. And then I said, he didn't seem to really wanted, he didn't seem to pick up what Sterling was wanting, I guess. I don't know. It was, Incubus was his project, so he was making the decisions. And I said, "Well, I know this guy Gino that's a really good guitar player." And he's like, "Okay, well, let's try him out too. We'll try a few people out and see what happens." So we tried Gino out, and he's like, "Okay, yeah, this guy will work." So we got
Yeah.
Gino in the band, and that's how it kind of became Incubus
Now,
from
John wanted to know if there was a female singer briefly in the early Morbid Angel.
Well, back when we were Heretic, it wasn't even Morbid Angel. Back when we were
Oh,
Heretic, we didn't, like I said, we didn't have a PA when we were a three-piece. We were trying out singers. I have a couple pictures still of different singers that we tried out, like Kenny, the guy Kenny that was on the beginning. We tried him out. We tried another guy out. I forgot what Mark was his name. I got a picture of us with him, and
mhm.
the girl that Dallas was going out with at the time wanted to try out. She said she could sing like King Diamond, and we were kind of looking for somebody that could sing like King Diamond at that point. And
Mhm.
she had a PA system that her grandparents had bought for her, and Dallas was like, "Hey, let's get her to come out and and sing for us for a little while, and then we'll say it doesn't work out," because Dallas was wanting to sing, and
Mhm.
he couldn't sing high, but he had almost a venomish kind of voice. So he was wanting to sing. He's like, "Hey, if she, since she won't work out, we'll just keep her PA since she's my girlfriend." and we'll be able to use the PA and I'll sing. And that's exactly what happened. So that is the truth of what happened.
Right.
So a
It's,
lot of
it's
people,
interesting because you actually, there wasn't many drummer singers like, in metal aside from like Dan Beeler and,
well,
and
that's
then you come around and like King Valley too is another one and Chris
yeah,
Reifert
I
a little bit.
didn't know Deceased back then, but I did. One of my favorite albums was the Exciter, that one Exciter record, and
Yeah.
and I loved the singing on it and the way that guy has a great
Oh yeah.
voice.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I thought,
Absolutely.
man, if he can sing like that and play drums, and they were only Exciter was a 3-piece, right?
Really. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I was like, wow, if they could do that and sound like that, maybe I could do it. And Trey was like, well, if you want to try singing, because when Dallas went, well, what happened was Dallas was singing like what was planned to happen. It did happen, and then
Yeah.
like they ended up breaking up. So she took her PA back, and we were back without a PA again. That's when we tried that Kenny guy out because he was way older than us, and he said he could sing falsetto like King Diamond, but he had a huge PA, but he was way older than us at the time, and it just
Mhm.
didn't work out with him. But that we did do the recording called The Beginning, which has got him on it, and that's you can find that on YouTube. And then
Oh yeah.
actually with that recording, you can hear Dallas was doing the backups.
Yeah. Oh
And
wow. Oh,
after since Kenny didn't really work out with his style of voice, that's when Dallas started singing.
yeah.
And then we got Richard in the band, and Richard was singing some of the songs too, but he couldn't play guitar and sing at the same time. Every time he tried to sing, he had to stop playing guitar.
Yeah. I think you told me that before, and I
Yeah,
was like, wow. Yeah.
and there's
Yeah. Then,
that I believe it's the Bleed for the Devil one that's got the live stuff on it, and that's a show from
Mhm.
a place called the Power Company, and you can hear both of them. And I have pictures of this too. They both were sharing the vocals at that point.
Yeah.
Then when Dallas ended up going to jail, we had to get another bass player, and Richard couldn't really sing and play at the same time. So the new bass player we got was John Ortega, and that's when at that point I was just like, well, you know what? I know all the words. I know, I know the songs, what they're supposed to be about, and how they are, and I was like, let me try singing. So that's when we dropped all of Dallas's songs, which was like half of our set that we had, and we
Right.
went with
Yeah.
all the Trey songs. And that's when I started writing some lyrics as well, like you know, bleed bleed for the devil was a newer one, and stuff like that. Some of the newer stuff, uh,
Yeah.
Chapel of Ghouls. So I
Mhm.
was started to co-write lyrics with Trey at the time, and then
Mhm.
we did a show like in April, and then we went and recorded the album. Came back and did that other show in May. Then Johnny was replaced, and then we did one more show in like July, I believe it was, of '86, and it was Sterling, and then the band split up, and that formed into Incubus for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
I'm
So
going to
that's
throw
you
a
know,
couple more comments up here, Alex, just to keep the audience involved. I'm pretty
we're
sure
not.
this was for me, all poor guy, because the next one certainly isn't me, handsome devil. That was about your dog when the dog was in.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
he's a,
Yeah, there he is. There's the handsome devil.
that's
And
a
then
that's
Hell's Eve rules.
Yeah. It was a great band. Oh, I think we lost Mike.
Last one. Oh, we lost him. Uh-oh. The dog took him out. Yeah, he'll be
Oh,
back. Yeah, he's coming
yeah.
back in.
Are you there?
There he is.
There he is.
That's weird. I don't know what happened. I went to put the phone back in this little holder, and it just like cut off. Sorry about that.
Hey, no big
So
deal.
before we move on to Incubus, I just wanted to touch a little bit more on Morbid Angel. And so was there some kind of musical vision that you and Trey had together? Because I got to say, from a guy, my exposure to Morbid Angel was the Abominations record through tape trading, and that was just mind blowing. Hearing that record, and I had like the worst copy, back then.
Everybody
I
did.
wore that that tape out, and it was, really a big influence on me and a few of the other guys from our small scene up here. And and the thing is about the music, like it was I don't know, it was just kind of like you guys had your own thing, but it was kind of like Possessed meets Merciful Fate or something. And your vocals, like, there really wasn't many people at all singing that type of style, aside from like Quorthon or something that I had heard.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
was
of
it
course.
was like super dark and but did you guys kind of have an idea of like how you wanted to take the direction of the band musically and lyrically, or was
Yeah.
it just kind of like a natural progression of things?
Well, when I met Trey, both of us were really liked the Necronomicon a lot, and
Right.
we always thought that would be the way to kind of put that book into music. So
Nice.
that's why a lot of that stuff was very based. I mean, a lot of Trey's stuff that he was writing in the beginning, with the lyrics, they come right out of the Necronomicon word for word. So we
Yeah.
were doing actual, like ritual spells and putting it to music is what we were
Yeah.
basically doing with that.
Right.
And that's kind of like what we did. We actually, everybody in the band loved Merciful Fate. It
Mhm.
was huge. And then,
Yeah.
then it became, when Don't Break the Oath came out and Melissa was already out, we used to play those as cover songs, it's like Evil and stuff like that off of Melissa. We used to do several Merciful Fate songs off of Melissa, just, when we were practicing and just jamming on stuff. So we
Right.
always kind of wanted to have a vocalist that could do that. But, finding another King Diamond, especially back then, was like nearly impossible.
Yeah.
So, that
Right.
we just kind of gave up on that. And then Dallas started singing because he kind of had that croaky kind of Venom kind of sound into his
Yeah.
vocals. And so, well, we'll just go with that. And then I did like Bathory a lot. I have to definitely say, those first two Bathories I think were out
Mhm.
when I started singing, or at least one of them was. And
Yeah.
and I just, I like that kind of. That was really, to me, they were like the first black metal band that I ever heard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
don't know if the term was really even a thing in '86, but with Quorthon's voice, I was just like, wow, this is pretty cool. So I don't know what the weird thing with my vocals is I can't really being that I'm playing drums and sings, I don't really try to do anything in particular. Whatever just comes out, just kind of comes out. And I
Yeah.
don't try to form it. I mean, I could do the death metal vocals but I didn't want to sound like everybody else. I just kind of let my natural voice do whatever it wanted when I was singing and playing. And that's
Yeah.
sort of how it came out. And it's even not like on the new record, I tried to do a little something different, more of a first person narrative, because a lot of the stuff was like telling a story from a
Right.
first person narrative. So I wanted to
Right.
try to do a little something different on this last record, and a lot of people didn't like it. They were like, "No, go back to your voice." And I'm like, "This is my voice. I'm just trying something a different idea." So I
Yeah.
mean, I think for the next record, I'll probably mix it up a lot and do a lot of different things. Yeah, it just I
Mhm.
mean, I'm gonna do some even heavier stuff. I'm gonna do some more narrative stuff probably, but different. Like in a different way. I like to change things a lot, but
Sure.
I I can't change a lot with my voice. It's my voice, and
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I do the real deep death metal very good. I mean, like Ross, man, he's like pro at that.
Oh yeah.
He's got such
Yeah.
a killer voice. I wish I could sing
Yeah.
like that, but I can't.
I
I
think he's
can't do
got the
Yeah.
patent on that one.
real guttural. I mean, damn. But our guitar player Bilal can do that pretty well. So I write some backups for him to do the choruses and stuff with me. So we have
Mhm.
some of that deeper sound in there as well. So but I will on the next record. I'm gonna definitely mix it up more and put a lot of different stuff
Yeah.
in with the vocals. Get a little crazier, get a little heavier, get a little weirder. I like doing weird stuff and stuff that don't other people don't do. And
Yeah.
when
Sure.
somebody says you don't sound like anybody else, that to me is the biggest compliment
Yeah.
a band
Yeah.
can have.
Yeah.
To
And
not sound like anybody else.
yeah, I was
Just
gonna
like
say
you
that.
guys, right from the
Yeah, I mean,
first record, you guys' first record in Immolation, right from the first record, you had your own sound, and
mhm.
you kept that. sound.
Mm.
Every time you hear an immolation, you know it's immolation, and nobody has really tried to do exactly what you do, which is good.
Yeah. Well,
You
I
know,
think it's the same thing with you, like you were saying, like, well, it's my voice. It's still my voice. But there's a progression there. It's still you, but there's still a progression throughout, all the music over the years and all the things you've done. It's like if I hear something, in the other room and I can tell it's you right away. I mean, there's nothing more important than
that's good
that
or bad.
identity, you know? And
But
and like you said, originality, and you know we'll go back to Incubus, but Nocturnus, I gotta say that I had a copy of the first demo, but when I got the Science of Hard demo, that's still one of my all-time favorite recordings, and that
man,
was just so unique. And the atmosphere, the use of keyboards the right way, I think. And it was just, there was nothing like it at all at the time. I mean, it was really groundbreaking. I thought,
Mhm.
that recording,
yeah, even when I was in Morbid Angel, if the live shows we did, I would always like there was a band called Synergy. Back then they were like a Tangerine Dream, and I actually,
Mhm.
one of the parts of one of their songs, I got a cassette of part of the song that got really crazy sounding with a lot of keyboards and stuff, and we used that for an intro until the one that was made for Abominations. Then we used that, obviously. um,
Mm.
but stuff like that, we used to, I always wanted to have keyboard intros, but then and I'd get demos from bands all the time back then, back in the early 80s or mid 80s, I should say, even. And that these bands would have this killer intro, and then the band would come on and it was a garage recording. And it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
well, what just happened there? It's like the difference between the intro and the band was huge.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And because most of people would get stuff from movies and just use it.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
so you
Yeah.
get
We
basic
did it too.
sounding, recording as an intro, and then the band would come in and it's literally because we did plenty of garage tapes too. Don't get me wrong, but that's what
Right.
you did.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
I always thought, well, man, I'd like to have, when you have the intro and the band starts playing, I want it to still sound like that. I want it to sound like whatever the intro sounds like. I want the band to sound like that too. And that was
Sure.
kind of like the point. I mean, we didn't get that on the first demo because I didn't have a keyboard player yet. Even though I would have liked to have had one, we didn't have one. But when I started telling the guys that were on the Science of Horror, Mike and well, Gino, Mike and Gino, of course, because Sean wasn't in the band at the time yet. And
Mhm.
I said to them, and Jeff too, they all had went to school together. They all knew each other. Mike and Gino were cousins, so that's how Mike got in the band. And
Yeah.
Mike and Jeff, the bass player, they knew a keyboard player, Lou, who went to school with them. So they're like, yeah, we got a guy that's got a really cool synthesizer and he makes all these crazy sounds and stuff. I said, okay, we'll have him do like 2 intros for us, and have him come out and we'll hook by that time, the whole thing had changed. It was Nocturnus now, and we had a little PA and a practice place, a different practice place, of course, than Morbid
Mhm.
Angel. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so we hooked his keyboard into the PA really loud, and we had him play an intro through the PA, and then we started playing, went right into, I think it was BCAD, and and
Mhm.
uh, and while we were playing the song, he started kind of playing along with us in the song, and we were like, wow, that sounds really cool.
Yeah.
That part that you did
Yeah.
right there. And because BCAD isn't a really complicated song at all, it's only got 3 or 4 rhythms in it. So
Yeah.
he was able to kind of pick the stuff up and start playing with us. And
Right.
and when that happened, it was like, wow, this sounds really good. So we were like, you want to join the band? And he's like, yeah, sure. And literally, this was like a month before we recorded the Science of Horror, because we had
Right.
already had plans to go in the studio, and that's why I wanted to get somebody to put some intros on the songs for the studio.
Mhm.
So
Wow.
so
Ah,
when Lou came out, it just like it sounded so good with us playing that right away we put him in the songs. And Mike started, okay, I'm playing this here, so do something similar to that, or put some weird sounds here. We were telling him, do this or that. And so that's kind of how that worked out. Because
Oh,
I
wow.
knew, I still know him, but I don't see him very often. I don't think he lives in the area like he used to. But John Oliva from Savatage, I used to see him out all the time.
Right.
And I used to go watch them when they were the early Savatage, with Chris
Right.
still in the band. And
Yeah.
they were amazing. And especially the early Savatage was heavy. And I used to go watch them at the, there was the Brandon Pub, it was called. And they used to play there a lot. And it would, and that's how I met that guy, Metal Mike. There was at the Brandon Pub, actually back then. And so I knew Savatage, and I didn't know the other guys as well. I mean, I didn't know Chris very well, but I knew, I knew Wackles, Steve Doc, the drummer. I knew him, and actually I ended up buying one of his drum sets for a while there. I had owned one of them. And
Oh, wow.
so I knew everybody but Chris really. And so I used to see John a lot out, and we used to always talk and hang out and talk about things. And I had seen him in a bar, and he's like, "Hey, we're doing pre-production for our next album for Atlantic Records," and they bought us a whole month in this real small studio to do the whole album as a pre-production, as to what we were going to go do. And I don't know where they did their first Atlantic record, but they were doing a pre-production. I think it was Power of the Night, maybe. I think it was after the second one, or it might have been their third album. I think
That Hall of the Mountain King or something like that, maybe. Or
that one. It might have been, I don't know, whatever one they did in 1988 or 89. So so they were doing pre-production in the studio, and he said, "Hey, we got all the pre-production done." And he said, "We still got another week and a half in the studio. So if you guys want to come in to this studio and record a demo," he goes, "I'll charge you $500 and come in on a Friday, and we'll work Friday, Saturday, and Sunday." And I said, "Damn, that's awesome." So we each put in $100 and went into the studio and recorded the Science of Horror with John, engineering and producing.
Right.
Wow.
And that guy can play anything. John can play drums. He has that phenomenal voice. He can play guitar, everything. He's talented, John Oliva. And so he was giving us ideas to do this and that, and it was like, wow, so that's why that demo sounded the way it did, really was because of him, because he knew how to mix keyboards and with music. Well, they were still more metal back then, of course, Savatage. So he was really good at like putting them where they should be in the music, because I didn't want them to be in the background. I wanted them to be up there with everything else. So it was a real instrument and not just an add-on kind of thing.
Yeah. What was the first Morbid song with Blast, and how did that come about?
I'm trying to remember. That's a long time ago. That's probably like 40 years ago. But I think it was maybe Demon Seed probably was the first one with kind of Blast in it. I think with that one or Bleed for the Devil. Both of those two were pretty much the ones that were the faster ones of what we were doing back then. I think it was probably Demon Seed would probably have been the one that I would say what came first. And that one was actually Demon Seed. I came up with the title and all the lyrics on that one. That was one of the things I was like back then. I was writing the more like evil, satanic kind of vocals and or lyrics, I should say. And Trey was writing more of the Necronomicon stuff back then, like Thoth and stuff like that. And Chapel of Ghouls was like one of the first ones that we both started putting lyrics together in.
Hellspawn, that was another fast one too.
Oh yeah, yeah, you're right. But that one came a little bit later too. That was one of the more later ones too. That was another one that I came up with the title and all the lyrics to Hellspawn. So that one was another one that was like after I started singing, we wrote. And yeah, I guess after I started singing is when we started doing the blast beat thing, because before that you can clearly hear on the tapes and things like that I don't think Hellspawn, I don't even know if we did that live back then because it was so new. I don't think we did that in that one show that we did after I'm not sure, but when Sterling joined the band, he said, "I'll join the band under one pretense, was that we do some of my songs too." So actually Morbid Angel, we did Reanimator's Mutilations.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I did. I have a recording of that actually. I
Yeah,
think.
there's a practice tape
Yeah,
that
yeah.
some guys were recording, and it's on there, and you can even hear Trey going, "Yeah, And Reanimators was another one that had the blast beats in it. That was an early song from 1986.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was that one, and we were working on another one with Sterling too. Another one of his. It was probably God Died on His Knees, I believe. Um,
Yeah.
when the band split in half. But with that last show we did with Sterling I believe it was called the Volley Club.
Mhm.
We did do Reanimators Mutilations live at that show, and I was singing that. But when it became Incubus, Sterling was like, "Well, hey, I wrote all the lyrics to every Incubus song, and I wrote all the music and this and that. So I want to sing." And I was like, at that point, I was just like, "Sure, if it's your project, Incubus is your project, not mine. So if you want to do the vocals, I'm fine with that. I'll just play drums." And that's why he ended up singing. And the weird thing about that was we didn't have any PA at that point in Incubus at all. And so when we practiced, it was just the three of us playing instrumental. So when we went into the studio to do the God Died on His Knees demo, we had never heard Sterling sing ever.
Right.
And so we didn't know how it was going to go, what he sounded like or anything. But
Yeah.
of course, it sounded amazing because he was a maniac and he sang like a maniac.
Oh, yeah. You could
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we went in the studio, I remember me and Gino were sitting outside, and he wouldn't. There was only one engineer. It was a really small studio. I think it was called London Music, if I'm right. That he had found the studio. It wasn't Morrisound or anything like that. And he had found the studio and wanted to use this studio. It was a really small studio in Tampa. And we went in there in 2 nights. We did that whole demo. The first night we kind of set up everything and did most of the music, and then the second night they went in there and did the vocals and the leads. But when Sterling was doing his vocals, he wouldn't let us even in the building. So I remember me and Gino sitting outside on the front step of the studio. We could kind of hear what was going on in there, but we were like, what is he doing? It's like,
Yeah.
we heard all this crazy screaming and stuff. And it was like, wow. And
Yeah.
then we heard what it ended up sounding like. And it was like, wow, that's pretty cool. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how that
And
came about.
unique, really, really kind of unique vocal style,
Yeah,
It's
he
kind
did.
of
He definitely did. I don't think he even knew what he was going to do because, like I said, we never once practiced with vocals ever
yeah,
in the whole
yeah,
period of the band. And even after we did the demo, the band only lasted about a month or two after that. And we never did a
yeah.
live show. We never got anywhere but that demo. And that was it. It's a shame because it was really heavy stuff for the time.
It was because I remember, I discovered the demo through reading about it, reviewing a fanzine, and I got a copy of it, and it was like as soon as I got a copy of it, it was like, oh, a friend of mine was like, yeah, they split up already, and it was just like, and you guys were starting to get a buzz, already in the underground, and yeah, it was. Now, where did you guys record that? Was that all? I forget what you said. Was that in Georgia? Or was that
I think it was called London Music. It was like a really small studio in Tampa, little independent,
in Tampa? Okay.
really
Okay.
small building too. It was very
Right.
small. I don't even remember
Yeah.
the guy's name that owned it, but there was just one guy there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, I'm gonna jam through a couple of these comments if y'all don't mind.
Okay.
We have to recognize Mr. Ross Dolan. Somebody giving him a shout out.
Yeah,
Favorite
I
death
have
metal
to do
vocalist.
that. Ross is awesome.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. Immolation is one of my favorite death metal bands. Uh, here's the thing: we've never had so many comments they scrolled, so I'm trying to follow them down.
That's good, I guess.
Anybody have any questions?
That's awesome. Yeah, it's good. We like to keep them, have audience participation too. Altars of Madness is one of the greatest albums ever released.
So is Abominations. That's my personal favorite.
Mike Browning, you're the best. Your music is amazing and totally unique, just like
That's my
you.
girlfriend.
You shouldn't have told that one. Like, yes, I am awesome. Oh, Hall of Mountain King, Hall of the Mountain King. it's been a year since I've listened to Sabotage.
I'll tell you, if you only know the newer Sabotage stuff, if you've never heard Sirens,
Oh
I
yeah, it's a heavy
say
record.
go listen to that record on Par Records, because that is an amazing, amazing album.
Sorry, brother.
Well, now that was what, 83 Sirens?
Yeah, that was like 83,
83.
82 or 83. I mean,
Yeah.
that's insane.
Well, Science of Hard
sold it to me.
Yeah, John Burke. David Vincent sold it to him. Oh wow.
Yeah, he worked at Aces Records when they were when Aces Records first came out. It was in a flea market.
Yeah.
In Tampa, and then eventually they moved into their own like building in a strip mall kind of thing.
Yeah.
But at first they were a really small thing in a flea market.
Yeah. Didn't James Murphy work there as well?
People work there. The guy Frank that owned Aces Records, he wanted to get people in bands there, working, because of course that would bring in the crowd.
Avatar.
John remembers hearing Sabotage when they were Avatar.
Yeah, I actually saw 2 of their shows when they were Avatar.
Oh wow. So that was what, maybe 81, something like that, or
82 when I saw them, I believe it was.
Yeah.
I remember I was still in high school, and I drove to Tarpon Springs because they were playing in a parking lot of a roller skating rink. They were playing outside in the parking lot, and I went. That was the first time I ever saw them. They were called Avatar, and I was just like, "Oh my god, this is like a heavier Ozzy Osbourne."
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, Chris is a guitar player. He was a lot like Randy Rhoads.
Oh yeah, he was a killer guitar player. No doubt.
Yeah, he was another Randy Rhoads. He was amazing.
Yeah. So Mike, you've had the privilege to work with probably some of the best guitar players in extreme metal ever, like through all the bands you've been in. Is there any of those players that that you can remember where there was like a defining moment for you, like creatively, like this is where I want to be, like this with this guy's at the table?
When we had Morbid Angel going, and it was like really things were starting to really gel, not the early Ice and that stuff, but when it became Morbid Angel and we got Richard, we really started tightening things up and came into our own, you could say, I guess, in that phase. And we used to just get really crazy and play and parties, a lot of stuff like that. And sometimes we would just jam on one thing for like hours, just like start a rhythm and just start like jam on it and just go crazy for a while and not even know what we were playing. And we used to record these things, and then we'd listen to the tapes and kind of make songs out of what we were jamming on. Like, oh, listen to this part we were doing here. And it just was, we could jam for, like I said, when we used to rent the generator and go out on the beach, it was just 3 of us at first. And then we did it a couple times with Richard too. We used to set up, there was another place called McFarland Park, and they had this like big hill thing with a gazebo up top, and the gazebo had electricity. It was all open, of course. And we used to I remember it had a bunch of stairs going up to it wasn't a big hill or anything, but it was pretty, probably 30 feet high maybe. And we used to carry all the equipment up there, set up in the gazebo, and this is a park, and just start jamming. And we would get these crowds of people. And because we didn't really have any vocals, and it was almost like metal Jimi Hendrix type stuff, what we used to do, just like going crazy on the guitar and playing, me and Dallas just playing drums and bass, and it was kind of fun. We used to just get up there and just jam and
improv, right?
It was all improv, and we just get these crowds of people that would just come watch us, older people, younger people, and they would just like, wow. and like I said, when we got Richard and everything started gelling really good, and we started getting tighter on the songs and making better songs out of that stuff, it really was like, wow. It's nothing. It's hard to tell somebody that doesn't play what it's like when you're jamming with other people and you're gelling really well and playing together. I mean, you know how that is. You guys are probably the tightest band out there to me. Live, I've seen you guys several times, and it's just like, I've never seen anything go down, like any mistakes, or I'm like, these guys are like perfect live. How do you do
We
it?
definitely have mistakes. Yeah.
And everybody.
But only Alex hears the mistakes.
Yes.
Only
Well,
Alex hears
everybody
them,
hears
but
mine.
I'm sure
But
they all do. But I had to hear it from him one night, and I was like, "What are you talking about?" It was
you know what I'm
phenomenal.
saying? It's like when you start gelling and you're playing live with other people, and it's
Yeah,
like
the
it becomes
chemistry.
like a one piece thing. It
Absolutely.
there's nothing like that ever when you're
Yeah.
making music like that, and
Yeah.
especially when you're just jamming and things are just coming out of nowhere. You're like,
Yeah. And
you
it doesn't happen that much. And when you're in a situation like that, when it's magic to me,
right,
it's chemistry, and speaking of, you're talking a lot about Richard, and I would consider, like, I mean, Richard's one of my favorite guitar players, and I think he is very underrated, and I think he gets a bit, like Trey gets a lot of the credit, as the guy, but Richard's solos, like, were so unique. I mean, I always kind of like it. It may sound funny, but he sounded like this, like, bluesy demonic monkey sounds on, with his leads. It was just so bizarre and insane, and a lot
yeah,
of feeling in his playing. And and I just I wish, there was more of him, out
I
there.
do
And I
too.
know for a short period, you guys were going to get together, and you guys are going to be doing something before he.
Yeah, we actually, I had ran into him. I went to eat lunch one day on a weekend with my mom and my daughter, and in this sandwich deli shop by my house, and we're sitting at the table, and all of a sudden Richard comes walking up, and he's like, "Yeah, I was back in the kitchen, making food, and I saw you at the counter." So he came out and
Yeah,
started talking to me, and he's like, "Yeah, I live right over here behind the restaurant." And he's like, "I'm doing pretty good. Things are better. Things are better." So we started talking again, and we're like, and he's like, "Yeah, I got," he had his band going, and it was all in about aliens and stuff like that.
yeah,
And that's kind of
yeah,
interesting. And I was
yeah,
like, "Hey, if you want me to," I think they were working with somebody, but he wasn't like, he wanted to do something with me too, and some of the other guys that he was working with at the time. And
mhm,
was it Truth to Disgust? Some of those guys, um, I think it was that he was working with, and I knew them guys too. So a couple of them were in Richard's band at the time, and we started talking, and I remember he had cut his finger really bad at the restaurant, and he was showing me pictures of it. He's like, "Look at this, it's all infected." It was terrible. He's like, "Dude, you got to go to the hospital." We were talking on Facebook, and he's like, "I
right,
know, I need to go, I need to go." And then it was his birthday, and I said happy birthday to him and everything. And then, like, I didn't talk to him for about a week, and then I heard Richard passed away, and I'm like, "What?"
Mm.
Because
yeah,
he had told me he was working, he had stopped drinking, he had stopped doing drugs, everything, and he was starting to do better. And
Right.
then all of a
yeah,
sudden, I'm talking to him, and I'm thinking, and in my mind, I was actually talking to Trey at the same time, and I thought, what if I could get both of them to come over to my house and just jam
wow,
one weekend? Just no expectations, just all
yeah,
three of us just get together again like the old days and just jam. And I
Yeah.
really
yeah,
wanted to do that. And then all of a sudden Richards passed away, and I'm like, what just happened? Because he was seeming to do really well. And to this day, I tried to find out from even the other guys he was already jamming with, and nobody seems to know what happened to him. And I know his sister found him in his apartment, but I don't know what happened. And to this day, they didn't even have a funeral for him or anything. And so I don't know what happened to him. I don't know if he fell off the wagon, or
Mm.
what happened, but
you know,
he seemed to have
I
been doing
saw
good.
I saw him, like, it was I'm trying to think of when this was, maybe 2018. I don't know if you remember, you came out to the show we were playing in Florida with Morbid Angel. We were at, and you came
Right.
out, we were hanging out, and I saw Richard walk by, but I didn't get a chance to say hello to him. Ross saw him as well, and, like, Pete was even there that night too. I think we all took a big photo together or something. All
Oh
of us,
wow.
yeah. And but I didn't even get to say hello to him, and I did kind of start talking to him again on the internet. Same thing you were telling me about. He sent me some of the tracks of like the alien themed stuff he
Yeah,
was working on, like a drum machine or something with
right, right. He had it all
uh,
on the drum machine. I was like, I could definitely do this stuff for you, and add to it.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's a real shame because I thought he was an amazing talent and also a super nice guy.
Oh,
Uh,
he was a fantastic person. I mean, he had his demons with the drugs and drinking and stuff, but and it overcame him. But man, he was one of the nicest guys I've ever met. You know, it was just like, how could this happen? But he was so beat down in Morbid Angel. That was the problem. They never
yeah,
gave him recognition or equal pay or anything. And
yeah.
he was
I mean,
always treated like a second person, like like not a real band member. And I felt bad about that, because when I was in the band, everything was equal.
Right.
yeah, yeah. That's the
And
way it should be.
I did
Yeah.
everything. I never, when we play shows, anything that we do, when we get royalty checks, whatever it is, we split it, no matter who did
Yeah.
what. As long as you're there and participating, especially in a show, why would
Mhm.
you say, hey, I mean, I understand, like, if it's one person and they've hired all these musicians to play with them, that's one thing. But if you have a
Right.
band, why would one of your guitar players get paid less than the other guitar player just
Yeah,
because? Just because. I mean, he's in the band, he's not a hired member.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
Yeah.
he was in there from the
I mean,
beginning
I
almost.
see the band is family. I mean, not everybody sees it that way, but
Well, you
I
have two
always want
different kind of bands. You have a family type of band and you have a business band.
to.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And that's a
Yeah.
big
And
difference.
you got to be able to separate that too, and make that work, as
Yeah.
well.
I mean, obviously a lot of business bands work as well, but the family bands seem to be the ones that really have a different kind of sound and gel together.
Yeah.
It never
So
works out when people get treated and paid differently in the
It
same
doesn't.
group. Never.
You got to always feel like something's not right.
Right.
yeah,
Right.
Especially if you're the one that's not getting paid as much as everybody else, and you're on the
Absolutely.
stage at the same amount of time, putting in everything that the other people are putting in, and then
Yeah.
at the end of the show, it's like, here's your pay.
Yeah.
mhm.
Hey,
I did
Mike, we
that once
have
for one band.
Diego.
I
I'm
did that
sorry,
once for
I
a
cut
band
you off.
I played in a band this guy that was it was called Hell on Earth, and it was some crazy stuff. But I played with them. Did you guys do the what was that fest they used to have in Chicago, the Expo the Extreme? Did you ever play that?
Uh, well, that doesn't ring a bell. Yeah.
Yeah, we came down and played. Mortiz was there. There was a bunch of bands that played that.
Oh,
And it was a really weird expo. They had all kinds of weird extreme stuff. But me and actually John Lee, the drummer that was in several other bands too. He was in Asheron, and I think even he did a bunch of stuff. But we had two drummers in this band. It was like a industrial kind of project, and I wasn't doing anything. And the guy that was the singer, he was like, "Hey, you want to do this?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm just sitting at home right now, so I'll go." And we played in Chicago and stuff like that. We did a few shows, and it was like that with him. At the end of the day, we had this one show we played, and it was packed because he did a weird, like, all kinds of weird stuff on stage, like torturing people, things like that. Crazy stuff. And at the end of the day, it was like he made like 3 or 4 grand that night, and he hands like all of us in the band $150 each, and he
oh,
walked with like almost $4,000 that night. And it's like, what?
yeah.
3 of the 5 of us quit that night.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
That'll do it.
Yeah. See you. Keep your $150. See ya.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah,
Every
and one of
time.
the guys was late to 2 of the practices, and he charged him and only gave him $100.
Wow. Fail.
He
Oh,
didn't even say anything when he was late. He's like, "Well, you were late to 2 practices, so I'm going to give you 100." And he's like,
yeah.
"And you get 150, and you get 150, and you get 150." And it was like, "What?" And we all
Yeah.
quit that night. Everybody but one of the guitar players quit that night.
Wow.
And
Wow.
ever since then, his band never went anywhere.
I
I
guess.
didn't really like it that much anyway. It was just something to do because I was bored at the time.
Yeah.
So I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I'll do it. And I knew the other drummer, and it was kind of interesting to play in a band with two drummers.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
must have been cool.
So I did it for the experience. It was fun. It was
Yeah.
crazy stuff, but it wasn't really what I was into. But it was
Right.
better than sitting at home every night.
Yeah.
Sure.
Hey, Mike,
So-
Diego from Spain's checking in. He wants to know, will they get a chance to see Nocturnus AD live in Europe? He hopes so.
Well, we were doing festivals like with you guys and stuff like that. We were doing festivals in Europe, Hellfest, things like that, and things were going really well. And we had it worked out perfect to where we did maybe 4 or 5 shows a year, because we're not really most of us have really good jobs and stuff, so we're not a touring band. But
Right.
but we do, obviously you got to play live, especially when you're putting out albums. You have to play live to promote the albums and things like that. The record company really wants you to do it, and it helps your sales and everything, of course. So we were doing pretty well. We were doing 4 or 5 big shows a year, and then COVID hit, and it just sort of like everything we had booked fell apart. And then we just were like, we took a break kind of, and then just wanted to write an album more than anything at that point, because nothing was really happening. And then we wrote an album, and then it got to the point where, well, I don't really want to play a show until we get this album written and recorded. And that ended up taking so long that it just like everything kind of fell by the wayside. And so, things will start happening again. It's just we took such a long break between COVID and writing that all the momentum that we had just got, because Paradox had just came out like a month or 2 later, bam, COVID hit, and everything just dead stopped. I mean, as well as I do, for over a year, there was nothing. Nobody did anything. And it went on for almost 2 years with the festivals.
Yeah. I tell you, for me, it was strange. Just like when we had our first show back, we played. I don't know if you're familiar with that festival in Vegas called Psycho Vegas.
Oh yeah.
So when we got there, it was kind of surreal, and just seeing I think the first guys I saw was like Alex from Cannibal Corpse, and it was just kind of like but it was cool. It was kind of emotional, like, because you didn't know this was going to happen again, and so it was kind of really cool just to like see your friends from the other bands, and like, oh shit, we're here, and it was definitely a pretty emotional, for me at least, experience to get out there and play live again.
Yeah, we did that MDF where I saw you. Remember?
Yeah,
MDF,
that's right. Yeah, that's right. That was
the guitar players ended up getting COVID at MDF.
Yeah, and what's funny? So Chris Reifert got it too.
Yeah, autopsy.
He got it. Like it was that same. I think it was right after that, and then he told me that he got it. So yeah,
I heard
crazy.
that several people got it from somebody went to that fest and had it and was just spreading it like crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Super spreader.
Yeah, you got a big festival and you're around all these people, and I got it actually. The time that I did get it was we were shooting the videos for our last record, so I flew to Ohio to do the videos, and I got it. Obviously, I'm thinking in the airport, and so but that you and many of us, it just kind of like I think we're all on a momentum, and all of a sudden that just stopped, and hopefully we get to see you guys there soon, so
you guys never really stopped besides from COVID. You guys are a touring band.
Yeah.
Play a lot. I mean, and we never really did that. So for us to build up a momentum was kind of hard to do. But we were going to South America quite a bit, and we were doing, the decent festivals in Europe, and that was actually keeping our momentum going. And we wanted to, even Paradox took a little while to put out, but Crystal took even longer, and it was like, because we only practice like once a week, so for all of us, and then one person misses a practice, it's 2-3 weeks before you see them again.
We practice like once a year, Mike. So I think you guys got to
You did
speak.
a lot at first. I mean, from
Well, we got
the
to do our homework at home. It's for the most part. We'll get together. We all live in different parts of the country, and so it's just
yeah. Well, that's what,
together we got.
writing wise, it's kind of hard because the way I like to write and the way we do write, like Paradox had a lot of writing like this, but Unicursal was all done this way. Is that we get in the practice room, me and the two guitar players, and I'll look at Damien and go, throw out a riff, and he'll throw out a riff, and then we'll learn it. And then I'll look at Belial and go, throw out a riff, and he'll throw out a riff, and then we'll put those two riffs together, and then I'll look back at Damien. Okay, now you throw out another riff, and we'll kind of like do this until we make a song. And that's the way, not one person. Damien in the earlier days, he was writing pretty much all the rhythms stuff. And then we got Belial, and he started doing some writing too, but still Damien was doing a lot of the writing. And he would sometimes come in with like a whole, several rhythms together.
Yeah.
Almost long. And we'd kind of like work it all out. But with especially with Unicursal, every single thing was written in the practice room on the spot. Like sometimes
that's cool.
bring in a rhythm, and sometimes they'll just start jamming a little bit on something, and we'll turn it into something. Like, like if he's, I can't really play guitar, but if he's picking a certain way, I'm like, wait, try it with like a faster picking, or try it with, put a little, in the middle or something like that. And we kind of help each other write the song, and everybody puts stuff in. And
that's awesome.
And even with Unicursal, our keyboard player too, we start, Josh, he was throwing stuff in. He's like, how about this? And then he'll play something on the keyboards, and then we'll transfer it, and I'll put drums to it, and but we do it right there. Nobody records anything at home and brings it in and says, learn this.
Wow, that's awesome, man. Oh, that's interesting.
That's why it's harder for us, and it takes longer to write, because we don't, like Damien won't write a song at home and put it to a drum machine and then just send it to everybody and say, learn it. We don't do that kind of writing at all. And we don't use click tracks or anything. We just get in there live and just let it come while we're right there. And everything's written that way.
I think it's cool, to hear you say that, because I think it becomes, more interesting when you have a group of guys putting stuff together, because, I've been in situations where I'm the sole writer, or I'm working with other guys, and we're working off each other. And I honestly, I prefer working off, different players, because I think it brings something more unique to the table, because there's things that you're not going to of, that the other guy's going to bring in. You're like, you know what, that's a better idea than what I had. And that's just making things even better. And, and I think that's more exciting, is working together as a team, as a band,
sure. I usually end up telling everybody, with the arrangements part, let's do this 8 times. Let's do this twice. Let's do this 3 times and cut this off here. For some reason, I'm pretty good at like putting the stuff together. Right. They come up with the rhythms, but I'll sit there and go, hey, let's just do this one, maybe 4 times, or let's do this one 16 times and put the lead there. That's a good lead rhythm. I'm pretty good at that part of it, even though I can't really play guitar. I can kind of like, hey, try this, or try this in this. And everybody, we all listen to each other. And that's one thing, is that we all listen to each other, and we all try different things. Nobody's like, no, this is the way it's going to be, and nobody does that. When we get in there, we work together, and, like we'll have a couple rhythms and say, okay, here's where a bridge can go, like a little scale bridge or something. And okay, Damien, come up with something. And he'll just like, sometimes it's best just to like, put him on the spot and just go, come up with something. And then he'll just go, it's like, okay, let's use that. and we kind of almost force things to work together sometimes. But in the end, once you do that, and then you kind of like smooth it out, it's like, wow, that really sounds good. And it works in between this one and that one. So,
So in the early days of the band, of Nocturnus, for the writing, was it predominantly like Gino and Mike, or Vince, or Richard?
Well, I mean, when Vince, in the first version, it was just Vince and me and Bateman.
And Bateman,
and Richard Bateman playing bass. And in the beginning, it was just me and Bateman for like a month or so. And I knew Vince, and he had a band called Entity, and they had
Yeah.
split up. So I was like, hey, I
Mhm.
know this guitar player we can get in here. And Vince came in, and he had a bunch of songs from Entity. So, and me and Richard had about 4 or 5 songs at the time, BCAD, things like
Mhm.
that. We had a few songs that we had just bass and drums and vocals. Basically, it was weird,
Right.
but we did it that way. And then when we got Vince in there, he had several songs from Entity, so we kind of like incorporated those songs. First, they were Entity songs, then they became Nocturnus songs, and then after Vince left and did Acheron, they became Acheron songs. So a couple of
Yeah.
the songs, like the Entity, for instance, was in
Yeah.
Entity, was in
Yeah.
Nocturnus, and was in Acheron.
That's
So
right. Yeah.
it's some of those songs were in 3 different bands that Vince wrote. But when
Mhm.
he left Nocturnus, he took all of his material with him. So it, Gino had gotten in the band from being an Incubus. So after we had Vince, it was just like, well, we kind of need a second guitar player.
Mhm.
And I said, well, we can use Gino. And so we got Gino in the band, and they didn't really get along that great, Vince and Gino. Gino's a very hard person to get along with. And
Yeah,
and
I've had my own experiences with
with
him.
him, oh
They
yeah.
weren't very, but he was an amazing guitar player, no doubt.
Yeah,
Great
that's all he
player.
did. He never worked ever. He lived at his parents' house his whole life, pretty much, and played guitar every day, 8, 10 hours a day. So, and his,
Wow.
probably biggest influence was Eddie Van Halen. So
Yeah.
he studied that stuff, and he came up with a lot of songs. Yeah, even though a lot of that early Nocturnus stuff. Once he joined the band, he put parts in, and like some of the stuff on the Science of Horror, he was on that demo. So,
Yeah.
Mike hadn't written that much at the time when we did Science of Horror. He had written a few things, and that, like I
Mhm.
said, they were cousins. So when Vince kind of got fed up, I think with Gino and moved from Florida, and that left me and
Right.
Gino and Bateman, and we got Mike Davis in at that point because they were cousins. And Gino was like, "Hey, my little cousin, man, he's really good on guitar. He's been taking a lot of guitar lessons, and he's gotten really good. I think he could do this." And we got him in there, and it was just like, "Oh yeah, he could definitely do this."
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah, he's a great
I mean,
guitar
that's when
player.
Richard ended up joining Nasty Savage because their bass player had
Right.
put his hand through like a window and like cut all the tendon in his hand really bad and couldn't play at all for years. And
Mhm.
they had tours booked with, they were playing places like Poland, big festivals and stuff already. And they needed
Yeah.
somebody really fast. And he's like, I think I'm going to do this. And I was like, well, I can't blame you for that. They had an
Yeah.
album out already, or 2, I think. And
Mhm.
I think he didn't come until the 3rd album. So, I
Yeah.
don't,
Yeah.
and then, so like Mike and Gino knew Jeff as a bass player because Mike and Jeff had, like I said, they all went to school together and kind of knew each other. And they're like,
Mhm.
oh, we know a bass player, so we'll get Jeff in the band. And we got Jeff in the band. And for a while, we were just a 4-piece without a keyboard player. And then, like I said, how we got Lou in there.
And if I remember, Jeff wasn't there that long because I remember when my old band Gorephobia, we opened for you guys on that tour with Napalm
Brian
and was
Cricket.
it God? You
Oh,
guys had
okay.
a different bass. You had like blonde
Yeah.
hair guy playing
Yeah.
bass.
Yeah. Jeff, he had a really, really bad drinking problem. And
Yeah.
when we went to record the album at Morris Sound, about 2 weeks before we went into the studio, Tom Morris came out to our practice place and wanted to watch us because he didn't know anything about us.
Mhm.
And because he's not really a guy that listens to metal or anything, I mean, he did the Morbid Angel record, but he's not really a metalhead like Scott Burns or anything,
Yeah.
so. And of course, we had to use Tom Morris because he did Morbid Angel and Earache was paying for it. Earache said, nope, you're going to use Tom Morris. So
Mhm.
we used Tom Morris because
Right.
that's where, who was paying for our recording. So
Yeah.
anyway, but Tom came out to watch us practice to see where we were 2 weeks before. And so we started playing, a couple songs for him. And after we played a song, he's like, Jeff, can you play that bass part for me? I want to hear what you're doing there and how your sound is. And Jeff's like, oh man, well, yeah, he's like, didn't want to do it. And he's like, well, just play the part, and he's like, all right. And he tried to play it by himself and he couldn't. He just got, and the more he tried, he got worse.
Oh,
And
wow.
all of a sudden he just took off his bass and walked out right in front of Tom Morris, walked out of the
Oh,
rehearsal.
wow.
Yeah, we had just one of those little garages outside, like those storage space garages. And he
Right.
just
Yeah,
took
yeah.
off his boots and walked away. And we're standing there looking at Tom Morris, and we got a record to record in 2 weeks. And it's like, oh shit, what do we do? And
Yeah.
we didn't see him again. And nobody could get a hold of him. He was living he had a Volkswagen van, and he was living in his van, and we didn't hear from him. Nobody had cell phones back then, of course. So you couldn't just call somebody. And we couldn't find him. We didn't know where he was. And then, so we didn't even know if we had a bass player when we went into Morrisound. And the morning we went into Morrisound, like say we were scheduled for a Saturday morning, right? So we show up there, and I think we started early, like 10 o'clock at Morrisound, because we had daytime recording there, because Tom liked to do stuff during the day, whereas Scott would work all night. But anyway, we show up in the parking lot and Jeff's already there, right? He's like the first person there. And there's his van. I'm like, whoa. And and his girlfriend's car was next to his van. And there he was in the middle of the parking lot fighting with her, holding a half of a 6-pack. They used to have the plastic,
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
He's holding that half empty already at 10 o'clock in the morning, completely drunk and arguing with his girlfriend in the middle of Morrisound parking lot.
Wow.
Not good.
And oh man. And so we set everything up, try to go, and he just he couldn't play. He was so sloshed, and he just left again. And it just left us with like, well, what do we do now? We got an album to record. We're in Morrisound that morning, and we have no bass player right now.
Right.
Oh, shit.
Yeah,
Wow.
it was a lot of people
So
don't
who-
know what we had to
so
go
who-
through to get the key recorded.
Who did the
Mike
bass?
Davis-
Yeah.
Mike Davis
Oh.
ended up doing it. And the
Oh, I
thing
didn't
was,
know.
Sean was in the band at that point. Gino had went to jail.
Yeah, that's right.
So we
Yeah.
had to replace him. We had no choice but to replace him because he had got like a year in jail for just doing something stupid. And I don't even
Yeah.
remember what it was, getting in a fight probably with somebody more than likely. But anyway, he was in jail, so we had to replace him. And Sean lived like literally 4 houses down from Mike Davis. And so they used to play guitar together all the time, since they lived right on the same street. And so he had actually showed Sean a lot of the stuff. And Sean already knew a lot of the songs because Mike had showed it to him how to play them. And so that's why Sean pretty much just slipped right in the band because it was so easy with that situation. But anyway, here we are in Morrisound, with no bass player. And at that point, even though Gino had written some of the stuff that we were doing on the key, it was still like Mike wrote a lot of it, the guitar parts. And so he knew what to play on the bass. He's just not a bass player. So literally we did the scratch tracks with just the 2 guitars and me. And we did that the whole album. And then after that was done, he did the rhythms. You redo the rhythms with better tracks. And after that, Mike went into one of the small rooms in Morrisound with a bass and just sat there with the recording and like hammered through every song.
Wow.
and put bass parts to it right there in the studio.
Wow.
So we turned the bass way down in the recording because it sounded like Mike playing guitar on the bass, basically. And it wasn't what would have been there as far as real bass parts. So it the bass really, really suffered on the key and because of that. But Mike, I mean, he did an amazing, he spent a lot of time just sitting in that room, going through the songs, learning all the parts, even though he wrote a lot of them. So it wasn't that hard for him because he's a great player anyway. But, he's not a bass player. So he had to play on a bass that he didn't own and make up half of the parts, based on what he was playing on the guitar, not what Jeff was playing on the bass.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he couldn't play with his fingers.
Yeah,
So
that's the thing about bass is like, when you're a guitar player, you gotta think like the rhythm section, the bass locking in with the drums and
Right.
even when I've had to do, I played bass on some records that I've done and you have to separate yourself and to be a bass player and that's a whole other world right there than,
it
playing
is.
guitar, you know?
And as you know, it
And
sounds different from a pick to playing with your fingers. And
Right.
yeah,
Yep.
did play with his fingers most of the time, so it was a different situation. And he was under a lot of stress to do it in a week.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Well,
we,
I mean, at the end of
you
the
know,
day, you guys made a classic record, that will be here forever,
I mean,
Right.
and
we would have been more prepared. Everything would have been. My drums were horrible. The drum set I owned was they were concert toms, so they had no bottom heads. And
right.
Tom Morris was like, I can't record this drum set. It doesn't even have bottom heads on it. He's a very professional kind of guy. And
Yeah,
he's like,
yeah.
this, I didn't have the money to buy new heads for all the toms and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Everything was old on my kit. Some of the cymbals had cracks in them. And it's just like,
Yeah.
well, what can we do? We didn't really
Yeah.
have like a ahead of time budget to buy new equipment or anything like that. We had to do what we had to do at the time. So
Right.
a lot of stuff suffered on that record, but that could have been way better. But it just, was a product of its situation and time.
Right.
That was like a silver set you had, like a silver it was like a silver colored
Yeah,
kit? Yeah.
the silver Tama Imperial Star kit,
Yeah.
and it was just like what Dave Lombardo had in the beginning. Same kind of
Yeah.
color and everything. He had one of
Yeah,
those
yeah.
too. Now I don't know if his had concert toms or not. I think he had the power toms with the bottom heads on them maybe. But Tom, before we did Thresholds, the second record, he was like, "You are not bringing that drum set into my studio. Sorry, it's not happening." And he said,
Yeah.
"I will rent you a drum set." And so when it came time to do Thresholds, I still didn't have the money to buy a new drum set. So
Yeah.
I mean, that silver kit was what I used on the tour when you were in Goraphobia and you guys played with us
Mhm.
in New Jersey.
Yeah, yeah, Pennsauken.
Yeah,
Pennsauken.
exactly. And
Yep.
so I had that kit still even then. And then we,
Yeah.
I learned everything on Thresholds. We did Thresholds and when it came time to record, Tom was like, "You're not bringing that drum set in my studio. Sorry, it's not happening." And I'm like, "Okay, what do we do then?" He's like, "Well, we rent you a kit." So he rented me a drum set, a Yamaha kit that was like brand new. And I remember walking in the studio. I never played on it before. It was sitting just, all in pieces on the floor. And he's like, "There you go." I'm like, okay. And
Yeah.
I did put my three little toms that I had, the 6, 8, and 10-inch. I did put those on there, and we
Mhm.
recorded those but those usually don't have bottom heads on them anyway. They're like almost like roto toms, so. But the kit was, I never played on it before. I had to set it up and do all the drum tracks in 2 days because we only had a week, and so it was kind of an experience for Thresholds, but it did sound better than the Key because of the situation. And Morrisound had just got the new SSL board, and we were the first band to use it in Morrisound, the SSL. So the
Mhm.
Key was recorded on the older 24 track, which ended up in the B studio in Morrisound. So when they
Oh,
bought the SSL, the old track 24 track went into the B room. So
mhm.
but it was all like I said, the Key was 24 track with reel to reel, 24 track reel to reel too. No
Yeah.
click track, nothing. And
Right.
they didn't have Pro Tools, nothing. It was a real recording. No Pro Tools, nothing. It was just what it was.
Yeah.
No edits, nothing happened there at
Right.
all. And
Right.
when we went in to do Thresholds, they had the brand new SSL. It was, they could do editing and things like that, and it still went on to reel, but it went from the SSL onto reel, which was a big, huge difference. A mixing board can make a huge difference in your sound when you're recording.
Yeah.
Sure.
So
Right.
now people don't even use mixing boards anymore. It's all Pro Tools.
Pro Tools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't even have to have a mixing board anymore. It's better if you do, of course,
Right.
but if you don't, you don't need one anymore. You don't need a big, huge 48 track, you know, mixing board in. So, but we were the first band to use that SSL, and I remember Tom Morris had the manual out because he didn't even know how to do things yet with it because it was so new. And we got somewhat of a discount on the recording from what I remember, because he's like, well, I'm not gonna, I had to sit here for an hour and look something up on how to patch this in or do that, and I'm not gonna charge you for that, of course. So we got a little bit of a discount for it, but it was kind of funny because even Tom was like, the board was brand new to him, so he even had the manual out sometimes, like trying to look up, okay, how do I patch this effect in or do this or that. And so it was interesting. Both albums had some setbacks because of certain things like that.
Right. Yeah. Happens. Hey, I'm gonna throw a couple more comments in. We have looking forward to new music from death metal legends Immolation.
Well, we're talking about Nocturnus.
Well, I'm just trying to include the audience in this. There'll
be another new record, that's for sure. We're working on it now. So.
Nice.
Yeah, and
great interview. To check the rest of it tonight. Yes, Mike about the time in Acheron and Argus. Stay heavy. Oh, Argus. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's an old from Tampa as well. It was Argus from Tampa band as well.
Yeah, when Argus was a band that when I was in high school, they were really, really super popular. When I was in early in Morbid Angel, I used to go watch Argus because they were what you called an A circuit band, and they had their own motorhome and everything, and they used to travel all the way up the East Coast and play bars, and they were the heaviest bar band that I've ever seen. They played Angel Witch. They played, like they did a Black Sabbath tribute that was like 20 minutes long that had little pieces of different songs and things like that. And their singer was just incredible. He had this really killer, he could sing everything from Iron Maiden, not old Iron Maiden, Paul Di'Anno. He had kind of Di'Anno kind of voice, and he could sing that, Priest, everything. And he had those killer highs. And so I used to go watch them. They were my favorite band to go watch, besides from Savatage, of course. And they were kind of like both bands were together at the same time, in the beginning. And they were kind of in a little bit of a competition thing. But Argus was more of a bar band in the fact that they played mostly covers. And they did have an EP that came out in, I think it was 84 as well. Or maybe, no, it might have even been 82. You know what? It might have even been even earlier than that, 80 or 81, their EP. So Argus put out an EP, and like I said, it was early, probably 81, 82, somewhere around there.
So they were before Savatage, or around the same time?
They were, because they were. I think both bands probably started about the same time, but Savatage was more of a. They were Avatar probably back then in the beginning, and then they turned into Savatage, and Argus was still together, of course, at the time. But Argus, like I said, was more of a bar band type of thing, but they played really good covers. All their set was like Scorpions, Priest, Maiden, and Black Sabbath, Angel Witch, Storm Child, things like that. They played a lot of really good stuff, and their stuff sounded like Angel Witch. Their originals, it was like along the lines of that kind of stuff. They used to do the Gorgon and all those, Angel of Death, and not the Slayer Angel of Death, but the
Angel Witch.
The
Angel of Death, the original Angel of Death.
Yeah, exactly. And so I used to go watch them all the time when they'd play in town. They were from here, but they were always touring, the bar circuit, and they'd go all the way up the East Coast and play and come back, and they were huge. And later on, I guess in the early 2000s, they got back together. And the only original member that wasn't in town anymore was the drummer. And so I knew the guys. And so Glenn, one of the guitar players, he's like, hey, you want to play drums for us? Tony's not in town anymore. And we want to start jamming again. So I was like, sure. So I ended up jamming with Argus for a couple of years. We did shows, local shows and things like that. And it was always, their originals and covers. And we did start working on some new stuff, but it never really ended up going anywhere. The singer kept having vocal problems and strained his voice really bad, and because he didn't sing for a while, and then they got back together, and here he was trying to do, Halford type screams. And
Yeah.
but we did quite a few shows, and they were really good. We had
Mhm.
it was a pretty good comeback for them. And
Mhm.
so yeah, but things kind of fell apart and just didn't end up happening very well with them, because those guys are even older than I am, and I'm 60 right now. So it's like,
Yeah.
they started having problems like everybody does when you get old. So it gets harder
Sure.
and harder to play things.
I
And so it just didn't, they ended up disbanding. But
yeah.
uh, it was fun. We did it for a couple of years. And
That must be cool
we
because,
used to do the
if you
Black Sabbath. I
probably
love
take
doing
yourself if
the
you take
Black
yourself
Sabbath
back to
tribute.
being a kid, like, you would probably never would have thought, like, "Hey, I'm gonna
Oh
be
yeah.
playing with these guys one day," you know?
Yeah, I used to stand there. I was early Morbid Angel stuff. And in fact, we did a show in a Morbid Angel when it was just me and Dallas and Trey before we had vocals. We did
Mhm.
a thing in the parking lot of the bar they used to play in called Mark Twain's all the time. And we used their PA.
Oh,
So
okay. Oh, wow.
yeah, we were all kind of friends. I knew them guys. In fact, I remember we played a party one time, a big party, and they ended up coming there. The whole band came walking in to the party, and it was like, oh my God, the Argus guys are here. It's kind of funny. So I looked up to those guys because they were a great, great live band. And and then I ended up playing in the band, which was cool. So it was fun. And I love playing that Black Sabbath tribute. It was like 15, 20 minutes long, and it had like
Yeah, yeah.
probably 15 pieces of the songs, and it just kept going, like a little bit of Paranoid, a little bit of everything, but all from the Ozzy days.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
And then
Nice.
we also
Nice.
did the song Black Sabbath. We did Dirty Women. um, we did a couple full songs as well, but the tribute was just, it was a blast to play that stuff.
Yeah.
Symptoms of the Universe, all the good songs.
Here's a
Mhm.
follow-up from Diego from his question earlier. I think he's willing to go see Nocturnus wherever you play. So if you come to the US, he's coming to US from Spain.
Nice. Awesome.
That's a dedicated fan right there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he'd throw another one in. He's 24 or 28 years old. Unfortunately, just discovered Nocturnus. So
Wow.
looks like he's gonna be listening to you more and coming
Hey,
to the States if you play here.
that's
Uh,
what you want. New
Yeah.
fans,
Yeah,
new,
yeah.
young,
Thanks.
The young
it's gonna keep us
Yeah,
old
Hellfest.
people
As you guys
going.
played Hellfest too. Hellfest is
Yeah,
unbelievable.
yeah, we
Yeah.
played there a few times before. Yeah, yeah, it's a great festival. Yeah.
I've been on the Bolt Thrower and Suffocation listening party lately.
Oh, nice. We did
Yeah.
that tour with Bolt Thrower too. The first European tour we did as Nocturnus was in with Bolt Thrower, and it was really good. It was awesome.
Yeah. All caught up
So
on the questions. Everybody in the audience that's shooting in the questions, I try to respectfully move them in when there's a break in the action. We want to include you. But sometimes I get caught up in the listening too and don't pay attention to the comments.
if anybody has any questions for Mike, please chime in. I don't know if this is a difficult question for you or if you can answer this, but of all the records that you've done, and of all the bands, whether it's Morbid, Incubus, Nocturnus, Acheron, is there any, in particular record that you recorded that you feel defines you the most?
Probably the Key, I would say, more than anything. Yeah, it was a product of its time, and even
Mhm.
though we had a lot of setbacks and problems with it, it still was, like I said, a product of its time. It was, there was nothing like it when it came out, which was a
Yeah,
good thing for us. And it was
yeah,
a big risk because so many people in death metal don't like to go out of that realm of death metal.
yeah,
And
yeah,
kind of like at the time, what we did was a little bit out of the realm of death metal. And some
yeah,
people were like, I will never listen to a band that has a death metal band that has keyboards. And then they listen to it and go, oh, this actually kind of works.
It does.
When you first think
Very
I
about
got
it, it doesn't seem like it would
a,
work.
I got an interesting, funny story for you, Mike. Is the first time I heard the Key was it wasn't out yet, and obviously I had the demos, but so I went up to Michigan. It was the Michigan Death Fest, the
Yeah.
first one. Morbid Angel, were the headliners. So later on that night in our hotel room, Trey came back to our room, and he was, partying or whatever, and he was being Trey, of course, and he had the Advance, and he played the key probably for hours, over and over again. And he would sit there on the floor playing air guitar, and he'd just be sitting there going like this to me, like this right here. And he would just sit there like he was obsessed. Like he said that you guys were his favorite band. So it's kind of, I don't know if you were aware of that, but like, coming out of, that band, and fast forward, here he is, your old partner. His favorite band was Nocturnus at that time. So I don't know if I ever told you.
No, but the weird thing is, like, him and Mike Davis actually met each other because when we used to practice at this one place that was almost every band in Tampa practiced at this place called Skipper Road, and it was the warehouse rental place, and but there was like rows and rows of bands, and Morbid Angel had a double garage, and then there was another band in between that, and then next to them, and then we were there, so we practiced.
Oh yeah, I know about that place. Yeah, you guys it was like outdoors, like
well, you couldn't put air conditioning in there, so you had to play with the door open pretty much. And some people built like a false wall under the door, and then they opened the door and put an air conditioner in there, but we didn't really have that then. And I don't know if they did or not, but I think they may have done that. But so since we were like literally 30 feet from Morbid Angel practicing, Trey and Mike started talking more, and they started hanging out a lot. And Mike was going out over to Trey's, and Trey was going over to Mike's, and they were playing guitar together. And Trey was he told me, he said, yeah, I loved jamming with Mike, when we were, would learn things. He said he showed me so many things, and and then Mike learned stuff from Trey, of course, too. But it was like Trey seemed like he was like enamored with Mike because of his technique of the way he played compared to the way Trey played. They were completely different guitar players. Mike was way more technical, you could say, I guess, and Trey was more feeling. But when the two it would have been interesting to see them two work together, for sure.
Yeah, that would have been cool. Yeah, he played the record like from whatever time it was at night, 1 a.m. till the morning. That record, so I heard it like 20 times in a row, that night, like in just air guitar, and he knew every part and stuff, and
there was a period where me and Trey didn't talk for a long time, really, and a friend of mine named Anthony, who knew Trey, he used to hang around Trey a lot too. He's like, I'm gonna, Morbid Angel was playing in Tampa, and this was about 5-6 years ago, and he's like, I'm gonna get you guys talking again tonight.
Yeah.
He goes, the bus is behind the club, and we're gonna go back there, and I'm gonna make Trey start talking to you. And so I'm like, okay, and I'm good with that. And so we went back there, and Trey was standing outside talking to people by the bus, and Anthony walked up. He's like, Trey, Mike Browning, Trey, like that. I'm like, what's up? And Trey's gonna be like, I don't know about this. And then we actually started talking, and then it was just like, by the end of the night, we were, I brought a copy of Paradox because it had just came out. So this was 2019. And I gave him a copy that night, and gave him my phone number. And about a week or two later, he, out of the blue, he texted me. He goes, man, I've been listening to that Paradox record. I really like it. And so we started talking again. And ever since then, we've been talking again. So he just texted me about a week or so ago, not too long ago. So, we still talk, which is good.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's funny. I remember I think it was wherever it was I saw you last, and me and you were talking about it. And then you were like, Oh, he just texted me right now. This is funny because yeah, me and you were talking, and you were telling me that you
Yeah,
guys
yeah, yeah.
talked
And so, I mean,
again,
it's
and
good. We're talking again at least. You know, I
Yeah.
hate to be enemies with anybody over stupid things anyway. So,
Right.
you know, it that was a long time ago, and you know, we both said let's not even bring things up from the past and just move on and you
yeah,
know
that's good.
friends again. And so I'm good with that. And
Mhm.
he's the one that said it, so he's the one that had to be good with it more than me because I didn't really care anymore at that point.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was it's been a good thing.
Well,
That's
there are a lot of people, including myself, that would love to see like one set of you guys just perform abominations
yeah, that would be
together.
neat.
That
I
would
would
be
do
pretty
it.
neat.
There's no doubt. I mean, I would definitely do it. I don't know who else would be in the situation besides me and Trey, because
Yeah,
everybody else is pretty much gone. That was
yeah,
Sterling's
Yeah.
not there, and Richard's not there. So like I said, at one point I thought maybe I could get Trey and Richard back together, but then that happened with Richard, and that's gone.
yeah,
And it'd be interesting. That's for sure.
yeah. No, I think it would be pretty awesome to see that. After all
Yeah.
these years,
Even in this
because
band, we always, not always, but if we have an encore, we usually do an old Morbid Angel song, but we do it, of course, the Abomination style. Like we'll do
Right.
Chat
yeah,
with the Ghouls, and we've done Demon Seed and The Gate, and what else? I think we did one other one
the
too.
angel disease. Didn't you guys do that
Yeah,
too?
Angel of the
Or
Deed. Yeah, that was the other one we did. Yeah. So we've
yeah,
done those three live, but not at the same time. Just like we'll pick one of those, and if we do have an encore, we'll do it as an encore.
Right.
yeah, cool,
Cool.
man. So, is anybody out there have any other questions for Mike while we're on here live?
Yeah, one last call.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll keep watching.
Okay.
Too early. It's too early for everybody.
I don't know
But,
that this is that Mike. You heard us say that this is the first time I've ever seen the comments scroll.
Wow.
Like we've gotten comments before, but not where they're like scrolling down. You probably caught me looking down one time. I was like, "Oh, geez, they disappeared down that way." So yeah, so this has been a lot of participation.
That's good. That's good. I'm happy
Yeah,
about that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we appreciate
um,
having you on, and I'm sure everybody in the comments do too, and everybody that's going to watch it.
yeah. So, is there anything you guys got, in the plans, in the works coming up at all, or for
Well,
live, or
I mean, we do have that one. We do have a show in Tampa called the Swarm Fest, and it's in November.
oh
So
yeah,
they do that every year. It's like a couple day fest, and so we got that going on, and not really anything in particular. Some people have asked me about doing some shows, but it's kind of hard for some of us now to plan that far in advance. Like, they're talking, oh, in April of 2025, you want to do this, and I'm like, I don't know if we can. I don't know what's going to happen yet.
Right.
yeah,
I'm not sure. It's hard for me when we were going and had everything going. I could kind of book stuff in that far in advance. But right now, it's been so hard to book something that far in advance because anything can happen,
Right.
from one day to the next anymore. And who knows, So, but I try to, keep an ear open for something good that would happen for us that we could do. And since we can't really tour, I if we do play live, I want to pick really good things and really
sure.
good situations for us to go do. And
Right.
and so, it's up to that. But we've actually just now that the Unicursal is out, we've started kind of working on a couple new ideas for the next record. It won't take nearly as long for the next one to come out, hopefully.
Right.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of
Hopefully, no pandemics.
yeah, no
No
more
more.
pandemic, that's for sure. So I want to kind of push everybody to start writing more and quicker, so we can get
Yeah.
another album out, a lot faster than 5 years. So
Right. Right.
I got to say the new record is definitely it's definitely one of my favorite records in a while, and I think it's one of your best that you've done. And it's like when I first listened to the record the day it came out, I was like, I think I wrote you and just told you like, hey man, I fucking Love it. It's just fantastic.
Awesome.
And
That's cool.
you
Yeah,
know, I thought Paradox was great, but this is even better. I think this is
we
even a step forward.
It is
And
a little more mature. I think it's more mature, but like I said, I kind of did a different thing with the vocals on this one, and a lot of people didn't seem to like that. But I wanted to be a little different than the last one, and so on the next one, I'll change it again and make it even more diverse and crazy and more of everything. And,
yeah,
and if people like it, that's good. If they don't, I still did it. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's the way I look at it. But I did think that we did a little better on the recording with Universal because we had more time to actually do things. And I still did the drums in one weekend. So
nice.
it's just we because the studio was in Orlando, we were able to just record on weekends. And Jarrett Pritchard, owns the studio and did
Yeah,
all the and stuff, he had a lot of tours booked. He runs sound for 1349. He does all of Tom Warrior's project,
yeah,
Celtic Cross,
yeah.
Triptychon, everything. Even Hellhammer when he does a special. He does everything in the U.S. and even sometimes, like I said, he does 1349. Sometimes he does stuff with Goat Horror.
Horror, I think. Yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
during the time that we were recording, he had to leave a few times to go on a tour for 2-3 weeks. So we would do the drums and then maybe scratch guitar tracks too with the drums and maybe get a little bit of the recording done with the guitars. And then we'd have to take like a 3 or 4 week break. And then, we'd come back in on a weekend on a Saturday and then just do a little bit more. But the thing was, even though it took that long because of, all kinds of different things like that going on, we had a chance to sit back and listen to what we had recorded and say, oh, I want to do a little bit more of this or do a little bit more of that or change this or change that. We actually, when you record an album, like, as in a week or so, what's done, it's done.
Yeah.
So we did have the ability to fix things and change things. Not really with the drums as far as go back and re-record anything, but it was a better situation, with everybody, that if we didn't like certain things, we could go back and fix them and things like that. So that's why I think Universal, in a way, came out better than Paradox in some ways. It wasn't as raw and heavy, but it was definitely more mature.
Yeah,
Awesome.
we had Cheesy Cheech saw on Facebook that you posted your kit with the Rototoms. Do you prefer them?
Yeah, I actually do. I love Rototoms. I've always liked the sound of them. And when I was in Morbid Angel, although I had the concert toms, I had a little 6, 8, and 10-inch toms set up. It was like in a triangle. You can see it in some of the pictures and videos and stuff from like the Grind Crusher tour, things like that. But I always like those really high pitched toms, and that probably comes from like Rush and things like, bands like that use you hear all that really high tom rolls, and I love that stuff. So I thought, wow, how can I get that but not have this huge drum set that looks huge too? And also the fact that I'm singing and playing, and that was always a concern with the labels, the fact that, hey, we can't see the drummer because he's got this huge drum set and all we see is drums and cymbals and a voice coming from the back, and we can't ever see him singing. So I thought, well, Rototoms are like this big, they're like a rim, and that's it. And so my kicks are Vista-like kicks, which are clear. Basically, they're like a plastic type of material, or acrylic, I should say. They're acrylic, and so they're clear. So my kicks are clear, and my Rototoms are, see-through pretty much too. So now you can see me singing and playing drums with the Rototoms kit. So it was it was kind of like a double thing. I like the sound of Rototoms, and also you can see, me singing and playing drums a lot better.
Right.
Yeah. I love the fact that the Rototoms. Always loved the sound of Rototoms. 1349, evil as fuck.
Yeah. Definitely.
Cool,
and even Jarrett was like, you're going to make me record Rototoms? You're not going to use a kit? And I'm like, yeah, I actually am, because I want that. And that's the thing. Even like my snare drum is a 1969 Ludwig Superphonic Super Sensitive. And I wanted that sound on there. So on both records, you're hearing rototoms and that snare, and not sampled toms and sampled snare,
Right.
because
Mhm.
the only thing was the kicks. The Ludwig, they're 22-inch Ludwig Vistalite kicks from the 70s. So they have a terrible sound. They don't have that good resonant boom. They're like, bah, and they don't really have like like a really boomy sound. So with that, I did use triggers for the kicks because of the sound that those Vistalites give out. Now, if I had the big 26 like Bonham did, then that would be different. But you can't, when you get a huge bass drum like that, like a 26-inch, sure, it
Yeah.
sounds good, but if you're playing fast, it's going to sound like,
Yeah.
like that.
Exactly. Totally.
So the only way to really get a good kick sound for me, since I had the Vistalites, was to, use a DM5 triggers on my kicks. Now, everything's played, of course, but it's that was the only thing that we triggered was the kicks, and only because of that. And the snares are real, all the rototoms are the real sound. So I wanted to keep as much of the original kit sound as possible and not do a bunch of sound replacement.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. And I thought Jarrett did a great job. It's amazing.
Yeah, well,
sound of record.
he's a perfectionist. That's the thing with Jarrett. He will make you like his favorite thing is, do you really want that to be on the record? You'll do a take and he's like, you really want that to be on the record? Okay, let's redo it.
Nice. Well, awesome, man. Yeah, man. Well, once again, thanks for coming on, Mike. It's been a real pleasure, and you were definitely on my bucket list to eventually get you on here. And,
well, I've known you since the Agoraphobia days with Chris, and
yeah, it's been
a long
35, 30, something like that. 35 years or whatever it's been,
So when you emailed me about being on the show, I was like, yeah, of course.
Yeah, cool, man. I'm glad
meeting you.
And it's just cool, for you to share all these stories with probably a lot of people don't know too. Like I know a lot of the stories, and some of them I didn't know tonight, and which was interesting for myself as a fan to hear. Some of the behind the scenes stuff. That I wasn't aware of. And, and this,
and the questions to ask. It's not like some interviews you do. It's just like, okay, how was your last record? Okay, is it hard playing drums and singing at the same time? It's like, okay.
I do interviews, and the guys interviewing me, and I'm just like, did this guy do his research or what? Or just you get tired of answering the same stuff all the time. And
you know me for a long time, so I knew it would be a really good, like, we could talk back and
forth.
Yeah.
Well, we could sit here for 4 hours, but
well, we'll back on the show for anything else. I'd always be glad to do it.
Well, sometimes people will say something about me not saying a lot, but I'm watching the comments and I'm also kind of caught up in the conversation because I'm watching it like everybody else is. You all are kind of having a conversation because you're old friends.
Yeah.
So I kind of catch myself just kind of watching sometimes.
Well, that makes it good, I mean.
Yeah, it's cool, man. I think we have a cool vibe going. It's always neat meeting all you guys coming on here. It's always been interesting for sure.
And the show is called the Guitar Gear Locker, but it's really, the show is just about musical inspiration and the stories behind the musicians.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about most quite a bit of stuff, but like I said, if you ever want me to come on to talk about other stuff, other things.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if some of the people don't know, there's a lot of other projects and records that you've done aside from Nocturnus and Morbid and Incubus. There's Asheron, there's like After Death. There's I know you did some like a lot of like really cool experimental stuff, which I'd like to maybe get into the next time. We could,
for sure.
I like stuff you would do, the percussion stuff and all the crazy archaic instruments you have at home and you know. And actually, I think you brought some of that onto the new record. You have that little instrumental on there and stuff that you did.
Yeah.
On the new record.
The new one, it's got Mesolithic on it. That drum
Yeah.
intro, it's odd because what we did was, I have a whole collection of djembes and stuff, wooden drums, real wooden, hand drums, and a
Mhm.
bunch of different types of them too. So what we did was I took like 7 or 8 of them, and we brought them into the studio, and we took the lead part in Mesolithic, and we took that piece out using Pro Tools and put it in its own little section of about a minute and a half, 2-minute section. And I I brought my main djembe that I like, that I had custom made several years ago. It's carved and custom made and everything, with
Wow.
stuff that we wanted on it, and the head's got like the Stele of Revealing painted on it from Aleister Crowley and things like
Nice.
that. It's like a
Yeah.
really cool ritual type drum for me. And so I brought that in the studio for myself, and then I brought a bunch of stuff for everybody else. And most everybody in the band can kind of play drums a little bit, and especially our keyboard player Josh. He's an amazing drummer. He can do grind blasting and all that stuff. And so I thought, well, since everybody's kind of very good on percussion stuff, I'm going to bring a bunch of stuff in there, and we'll do an intro that's all real live drums, all real
Mhm.
hand drums type stuff. And Belial, our guitar player, he had a string with goat toes on it, real goat toes, and
Mhm.
you shake it and they clack like, like make a weird, like a tambourine almost. And he brought that in there too. And so we took that little piece of Mesolithic for timing wise, and for the rhythm, and I played hand drums on top of it to match what was going on in the song. And we didn't practice this before. It was just an idea I had like after, and I was like, why don't we do a real, thing that would be real instruments that they had back in that Mesolithic period. They had drums, and of course stuff like goat toes and things like that. So
Yeah.
everything on there is like, could have been in that period of time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
drums in there,
That's
I laid the
cool.
track down on top of that, and then I had everybody else come in there and put something on top of that. And then I did the goat toe thing because he wasn't sure what to do with them. So I kind of shake them like a tambourine kind of thing, like on top
Wow.
of it, like hi-hat
Yeah.
almost rhythm on top of the drum rhythm. And you'll hear that's the high pitched thing that you hear in there. But we did about a little piece that's about 2 minutes, and that became the intro for Mesolithic. And then if you really listen to it, we brought it back in during the lead part again, where we actually modeled it. And
Mhm.
so it kind of comes back in, but lower in the background during the song.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Here
That's
comes the
awesome.
compliment from Miss Cynthia Books
My
of
wife,
the new album.
she likes the
Alexis,
new album.
Well, that last name sounds familiar.
yeah, right.
Oh man,
That's
awesome.
awesome.
Well, yeah. Once again, thanks for coming on. And a little side note, I'd love to hear more of that stuff. You do more of the, that kind of,
Oh yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
I did the Mike Browning inner workings thing. Yeah, that was it was like 4 pieces I recorded on 2 keyboards, and it was all. I don't know. I just had this inkling one night to do some recording on the keyboards, and I didn't
Mhm.
plan anything out. And I just hit. I had a Fostex 16 track little mini recorder at my house. I still have it.
Mhm.
And I plugged the 2 keyboards in, and I used a sustain pedal, so I would start playing on one keyboard and get a weird sound going, and hit the sustain pedal, so it would keep going. Then I'd go on top with the other keyboard and just start layering weird stuff over it. And
Yeah, yeah.
one's a Korg Poly 61 from the early 80s, Korg Poly 61 synth, and the other was a Yamaha SY22 keyboard from like the 90s.
Right.
And that thing's got a lot of weird like horror type sounds in it. It's crazy. It's a really cool keyboard. And so
Wow.
I used those 2 keyboards, and I did 4 pieces live, and I just started just making sounds, and didn't plan anything out. And when I felt like I was done, I would just hit the stop button. So each one was about 12 to 15 minutes long, and I did 4 of those in one night. And then the only thing I did was I went back and added some reverbs and some effects to the 2 keyboards after, but I didn't put any extra tracks in. All the keyboard stuff, no overdubs. Everything you hear was done completely live with one take. And it turned out, after I was done with it, I was like, this is pretty cool. So I kind of shopped it around to a few people. This guy had this label that I don't even remember the name of the label now. It was like a small label that he did keyboard stuff, soundscapes, things like that. And he's like, dude, I love this. I'll put it out. And so I put it out. And I think there was only like 500 of them made CDs. And it's called Mike Browning's Inner Workings. And it's called Transmissions.
Nice.
Yeah, it's just 4 songs. It's 4 tracks, but each track's about 12 to 15 minutes long. And so it was just I didn't plan on doing it. It was just something I recorded for fun one night. And then when I got done with it, I was like, maybe I should do something with this. So
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought about redoing it again, maybe not the same thing, of course, but another version of it, like a new version with new stuff on it. So
Yeah. Well, let's bring it back and we can get more into
Yeah.
this stuff and more into some other interesting topics besides just the music, I think. And I mean, when I get home from the tour, I have a tour for a couple of weeks, and then I mean, when I get home, let's see if we can get you back on. That would be great, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, good luck on the tour. That's awesome.
Yeah, thanks. I'll be out with some fellow Florida guys. Well, not originally Florida. Cannibal. I'm going out with Cannibal Corpse.
Oh, nice. That's going to be a hell of a tour then.
Yeah, so that'll be good.
Yeah.
And you knew all those guys too. So.
Oh yeah, I've known those guys about as long as you, probably. So.
Yeah. Since they were right up in your area at first.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. Yeah, originally. Yeah. So, all right, cool, man. Well, once again, thanks for coming on today, Mike, and hopefully we get you on soon again. And love the new record, and can't wait to hear some new music from you as well. And everybody, go out and get the new Nocturnus AD record out on Profound Lore Records, right? And and some killer videos too. Maybe we can get into the next time.
Yeah.
So,
all right, cool, man. Well,
thanks everybody for joining us in the chat.
It was great being on here and meeting you. And you look familiar though. I don't know why, but I think I met you before somewhere, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Oh, Roger.
Roger.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
You know what? I get that a lot. It's the big head. It just looks familiar to everybody. I have a giant head.
You look familiar though. I don't know why, but did I meet him before? Of course I know.
You know what? I wish, because that would mean I lived in Tampa and I'd be near Clearwater.
Yeah, we're in Virginia.
I love that place down there.
Yeah, that's a
nice area. Yeah,
definitely.
But hang out for a couple minutes.
Do it again for sure if you want. No problem with me.
Mike, hang out. I'm going to end the stream here. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe. And thanks again for all the comments.
All right.
Cool, man.